تاكر كارلسون ضيف برنامج الليوان مع عبدالله المديفر.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله، حياكم الله في الليوان. الليلة حكاية تاكر كارلسون في الليوان تتضح الحكاية. حياكم الله من جديد وباسمكم جميعا أرحب بضيفي تاكر كارلسون، أحد أهم الفاعلين في تاريخ الإعلام الأمريكي الحديث. أهلا تاكر في هذا الحوار، سعيد جدا بوجودك في الليوان.
Thank you for having me.
في البداية، ما هو السؤال الذي لا تريد أن أسألك إياه؟
I don't know. I'm not. I like questions. I'm not afraid of any. Afraid of any question. I may not have an answer, but I'm not afraid of the question.
أنا أعجبت ب مرة تكلمت، أنت قلت أنا أحب الأكل والشرب والحاجات الأساسية الأخرى، ثم أحب الحديث مع الناس. هذه الرغبة في الحديث هي شعور جميل جدا، فأنا مرتاح بالحديث معك لأنك شخص يحب الحديث.
Oh, I love it. I mean, it's the joy of life. I mean, the two great joys in my life are, and I think in most people's lives, are nature, God's creation, and other people. And in my family, our main source of entertainment is dinner, and we have extremely long dinners. And the conversations at the table make me laugh, make me think. It's the happiest times in my life are eating with my family. So no, of course, talking to people, that's what I've done for a living for 35 years and I've loved it.
جميل. الناس هنا يعرفونك من خلال برامجك التلفزيونية وظهورك في الحوارات، ولكن من عملوا معك في الكتابة يتحدثون عن موهبة غير عادية في الكتابة. أنا أتحدث مثلا عن تينا براون، مارك وارن، يقولون أنك كاتب موهوب فعلا، وأنه خسرت الكتابة شخصا عظيما في الكتابة لأنه انجرف إلى التلفزيون الشعبوي الذي يستطيع أن يقدم في الكتابة أكثر مما يقدمه في التلفزيون.
I think that I love to write, but mostly I love to read. I like to read. I understand ideas through reading them rather than from watching them in images. And writing is a natural product of my love of reading. But television, at least as I do it, is defined by writing. So I would write my show. So I never stopped writing. I wrote this morning. I just do it in a different way. I do it for television. But no, I love to write. I can't think through a question until I write it.
جميل. أنا اطلعت على مجموعة من الكتابات، لكنه ما استوقفني أكثر هما كتابين. الكتاب الأول هو سفينة الحمقى. طبعا لفتني الاسم غريب، وكنت أتساءل ما هي السفينة ومن هم الحمقى. اكتشفت أن السفينة هي الدولة أو المشروع الوطني، والحمقى هم من يقودون تلك السفينة. ليست هذه فكرتي، لكن فكرتي ظننت أنه الصراع بين يسار ويمين في الولايات المتحدة. عندما تقرأ الكتاب تقول أن هناك صراع آخر، صراع بين النخبة المستفيدة وبين البسطاء. هناك صراع بين نحن وهم، صراع بين الأشرار والأخيار، صراع. أريد أن أفهم أكثر منك جوهر هذا الصراع بين النخبة وبين الطبقة المتوسطة.
Well, I could talk about it for days. In fact, I wrote a book about it, so I have a lot of thoughts about it, but I would summarize it this way. I used to believe that what mattered in a country was the nature of the people who live there. What are the people like who live in the country? And over the years, I'm now 56, I have come to believe that that's important, but much more important is the nature of the leaders. The leaders define a country. They make the decisions, and ultimately the people will follow them whether they like it or not. And so if you have wise leadership, you will have a happy, prosperous country over time. If you have unwise, selfish, stupid leadership, you will have a country in trouble. And that really is the main change in my thinking over the years. And I came to believe that the West, not simply the United States, but many of the countries that I love that my ancestors came from were being ruled by people who were unwise and who were selfish. And that in order to hide what they were doing, they created artificial conflicts between the people they ruled. So the idea was, and it's always the same idea, divide and conquer. Fight amongst yourselves as I do what I want, as I steal. And I came to believe that, and I still believe that, and I think it's very obviously true.
لا بس الفكرة أنه المشكلة بنيوية، أنه النظام نفسه هو مبني على تحالف غير معلن بين نخبة من اليسار ونخبة من اليمين. هذه الفكرة أنه تسمح للفاشلين بأن لا يغرقوا مع السفينة عندما تغرق، وأنهم هم دائما ينجون من المحاسبة، والذي يدفع الفاتورة هم البسطاء.
Well, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, and that's unfair. In a family, so the family is the structure of all human organizations. In a family, the father is in charge. It's a patriarchy. He makes the decisions in consultation with his wife for the benefit of his children, but ultimately he is the decider. And when things go wrong, he is blamed. It's his fault. That's healthy. The leaders should take the blame. They should admit that they've done something wrong out loud. They should tell people, I did something wrong, as the father would. It's the worst form of leadership, where you have a father who makes the decisions and then when they go wrong, blames his wife or blames his children. That is dishonorable, that is immoral, and it doesn't work. And that's what we are now living under, unfortunately.
يعني هنا سؤال عندي عن الدولة العميقة في أمريكا. من هي الدولة العميقة في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية؟
Well, the deep state is not a conspiracy theory. It's a very obvious reality. The deep state is comprised of the shareholders. Think of a country as a company, a publicly traded company. Who controls a publicly traded company? The biggest shareholders, the people who own the most of the company. They have the most votes. That's not weird. That's very obvious. And countries are the same. So the people who have the biggest voice in a country are the people who own the most of it. And so the deep state is that. It's the ownership of the country. And that would include government agencies, particularly the intelligence and law enforcement agencies. That would include its biggest businesses. That would include the biggest shareholders. And that's the deep state. It would not include the voters. So in the West, where we have been told this is a democratic republic, you're in charge, you make the decisions, it has been difficult for people to understand that that's not true. They make some decisions. It's not all fake, but the big decisions, when to go to war, how to structure the economy, these decisions are not made by voters.
وتاكر كارلسون جزء من هذه النخبة ولا خارج النخبة؟
Well, I certainly grew up in it. I grew up around it, all around it. And so, of course. And that's why I know what it is. And it took me many years to understand that. And I think that is a function of human nature. If you're too close to something, it's hard to see it. I always think if you have a spouse who has a drinking problem, who drinks too much alcohol, probably not a huge problem in Saudi Arabia, but it's a huge problem in a lot of countries. All of your neighbors know, but you're the last to know because you're too close. And so that was my experience. I was around things and I didn't understand what they were, and I'm starting to understand that now.
هل أنت يعني قررت أن تخرج من هذه النخبة أم هم انقلبوا وأخرجوك منها؟
Well, I believe in an elite. I support the idea of an elite. Every country has an elite. In monarchies, it's called the royal family. It's very straightforward. Everyone knows who they are. You can look up their names if you want. It's very clear. Who's in charge? The royal family's in charge. In a country like mine, it's less obvious, but it's still real. And I don't think that's bad. I think it's inevitable. That is a function of human nature. That's how people are. All people, everywhere, in every civilization. The question is whether they're good or bad. Are they wise? Are they foolish? Are they selfish? Are they altruistic? And once again, what I want and the purpose of my public life is to try to encourage better leadership, not to tear it all down, not to create a flat society. There's no such thing, but to encourage the people with power to care about the people they have power over. That's it.
أنت جمعت مقالات على مدار 30 سنة في كتاب سميته كتاب الانحدار الطويل. في فكرة غير عادية في هذا الكتاب، أنه أمريكا في مسار بطيء منحدر. وين الخطر في هذا الانحدار؟
Yes.
أي أنواع الخطر في هذا الانحدار؟ ما هو الانحدار الأخطر في أمريكا اليوم؟
Well, there are dangers both for the United States and for the rest of the world. The United States has essentially ruled half the world from 1945 until 1991, and then from 1991 until 2023, I'll say, the beginning of the Ukraine war, was it the unipolar power, was the most powerful country in the world, and it dictated terms to the rest of the world, mostly through its currency, the dollar. And as that changes, as it becomes obvious that there are competing power centers in the world, and the United States withdraws to some extent, not entirely, but to some extent, there's a danger of chaos. And I'm always more concerned about chaos than anything else, because it's intolerable. People can't live in chaos. It's evil. It always results in the deaths of the weakest, and everything about chaos is bad. So I'm very concerned about that, and I'm concerned about it domestically too, in our own country. As systems change, in moments of change, there can be outbreaks of chaos where it's not clear what the rules are or who's in charge, and the strong oppress the weak. But you don't want that. You've seen it around the world. You saw it in Syria. You saw it in Libya. I mean, it's a story of. You saw it in the 5th century after the fall of Rome. I mean, it's a very familiar story. But we don't want that if we can help it.
لكن اللي يقصده أن داخل أمريكا أنت تتحدث عن انحدار. هل نحن نتحدث عن انحدار في السياسة، انحدار في الثقة، انحدار في الاقتصاد، انحدار في الإعلام؟ أي انحدار؟ لأنه من يرى أمريكا من الخارج هي بلد التقدم، هي البلد الأقوى، بلد القوة، بلد التجارة، يعني بلد الاقتصاد. أين الانحدار الذي أنت تراه ونحن لا نراه؟
Well, I mean, it's happening on many levels, but the big forces are these. So the Soviet Union falls in the summer of 1991, and the United States becomes the global hegemon. It becomes the most powerful country, which has the most powerful military and also the dominant economy. And in the subsequent 35 years, China has emerged with a larger economy than the United States and a manufacturing economy, which is inherently more durable and more powerful than a finance economy. So China is not just a rival. China is the eastern pole of the world. We have to treat China at some point soon as a kind of co-ruler of the world. And then there are other power centers. One of them is the GCC, the Gulf, led by its biggest country, this country. Another is Russia. India is another. Turkey, maybe yet another. I mean, there are it's a much more complicated world. And I think you can navigate that. The United States can navigate that and has to. But it's a question of flexibility and being able to make wise decisions. How do you can't just pretend that China has a smaller economy than the United States and we can tell China what to do and you must buy our treasuries. That doesn't work. It's not going to work. And so how do you figure that out? And I am just sincerely praying that our leadership can adjust to realities that can't change. And our president is going to Beijing in April to meet with President Xi of China. And I expect that new terms will be discussed for how do we manage this? We have a globalized economy. We're all dependent on each other. And so over time, that means power sharing in other areas too.
من واقع خبرتك الطويلة في الإعلام الأمريكي، كيف تصنع السردية في الإعلام الأمريكي التقليدي؟ ومن يصنعها.
It's funny, you learn one of the reasons I love travel is you learn so much about your own country when you go to other countries and you see their systems. And when you first get there, you think, oh, this is so different. Nothing like this happens in my country. And then over time you realize people are pretty similar no matter where you go. And yes, this does happen in my country. One of the great shocks to me, and this sounds absurd, but it's true, was learning that narratives I saw being constructed by foreign governments for the purpose of propagandizing, lying to their own populations, were also happening in my country. I didn't really believe that was happening, but of course it was. And the US media was not different materially from the media in lots of other countries where the government tells you what to say. This is the story. This is what we're telling the people, and you go along with it. I did not believe that was happening in the United States. I didn't, and I worked there. I worked at CNN for many years. I had no idea that we were taking orders from the US government, and we were, and they all are. And, we have media freedom. We have the First Amendment. We have freedom of speech in the United States, and it does exceed the freedom in any other country. That is a fact. And I'm proof of that. I'm still a free man, so it is real. But so is the control. And it sounds naive. None of your listeners will believe me, but I really did not know that. And I learned it with the rise of Trump, and I've been shocked by it ever since.
من يقرر ما يقال وما لا يقال؟
Well, I don't think that there's a council. I don't think that there's a meeting. I don't think, the head of JP Morgan gets together with the Secretary of Defense and the president and decides what we're going to say. And Larry Fink calls in from BlackRock. I mean, that doesn't happen. But I think it's very clear to the heads of the largest media organizations what their biggest advertisers and shareholders and the people who run the government want to hear and what they don't want to hear, and generally where the lines are. So it is allowed you can have a debate about foreign policy, but you can't have a debate about the assumptions behind our foreign policy. Is it really a good idea to have NATO? What is the point of NATO? You are not encouraged to ask that. Why is Israel our greatest ally? Why? You are not allowed to ask that. Even asking the question is off limits, and so nobody does. I didn't for 30 years. I didn't think to. It's only when you ask those questions, which are very simple questions, they're not attacks, that's not hatred. Those are the most obvious of all questions. Why are we doing this? It's only when you ask those questions that you realize what the rules are. And I hadn't really known what the rules were, but I do know now. And you're not encouraged to ask those questions. Why? Because once you do ask them, the people you're asking don't have good answers, because there are no good answers. There are no rational, logical answers. There's only emotion. And that tells you right there that none of this is serving the United States. It's not helping us to do it the way we're doing it.
ما هو الموضوع الذي يمكن أن ينهي مسيرة أي صحفي في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية لو طرحه؟
Well, any big question, right? So politics in the United States and journalism in the United States, this is changing, by the way, but for most of my life has been conducted in a very narrow sphere. We can debate about these 5 questions. We can debate about race relations, which is what we've debated for 60 years. Black people, white people, they don't like each other. What can they do? They love that debate. But the big questions like, why do we still have troops in Europe? Or what is the American economy? Or why would we ever have troops in Syria? What does Syria have to do with the United States and its national security? Those questions. Why are all these documents from 9/11 still classified? Questions that are not outrageous, they're central. I mean, again, they're obvious. Any honest person would ask those questions if he thought about it. Those questions were never raised, much less debated. No one asked them because everyone could feel, oh, don't ask that question. And my instinct has always been, if someone is discouraging you from asking a question, it's your job to ask it.
مم. وهناك برمجة جماعية للإعلام الأمريكي أن يكتفي بالأسئلة المتوسطة وألا ينتقل إلى الأسئلة الكبيرة.
Of course. And then you begin to, and by the way, there's a lot that I don't understand. I don't want to pretend that I have everything figured out. I certainly
ومن
don't.
يسأل يدفع الثمن.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. You get fired immediately. Well, I have been fired. Repeatedly.
وعندنا مثال حي.
Yes, I've been fired. I'm not embarrassed that I've been fired. But yes, you are not encouraged to ask those questions. And I do think that honest people, all of us lie, but we try not to. You shouldn't lie. You should not lie. I think that's a sort of basic rule in Christianity, and in Islam, don't lie. I think if you are an honest person, you might not want to answer a question, but you shouldn't be afraid of it. Why would you be afraid to answer a question? And I think it tells you a lot when people become hysterical, when they start yelling, when they attack you, when they fire you for asking a question. When they say a question is hate, no, it's not. And in my case, it's actually not. I don't believe in hate. I think it's immoral. I try not to hate. Every day I say prayers that I won't hate because it's not good for you, because it's not allowed in my religion. We are not allowed to hate. In my religion, we are not allowed. It says it again and again and again. No hate. I have hated, but I don't want to. So it's not a question of hate. It's a question of honesty. I believe in honesty.
هنا يجعلني أسألك سؤال عن الحياد. هل الحياد خدعة إعلامية أو موقف أخلاقي؟
Well, I think the debate over neutrality is in some sense a trap. It's hard to know what neutrality is. I don't think any of us is neutral about anything. I understand the concept. I mean, when I entered journalism in 1991, the year the Soviet Union fell, in fact, the same week the Soviet Union fell, it's sort of interesting. The goal was neutrality. Be neutral. Take yourself out of it. And I understood that concept. But as I progressed in this career, I began to believe that really wasn't the relevant question. The relevant question is, are you being honest? Are you telling the truth? Or even more precisely, are you not lying? You're not required to say everything you think. If you think your friend has gotten fat, you don't have to say that. That's not required. But you can't lie. You are not allowed to lie. Period. So this is the belief that I have come to. It's the standard that I hold other people to. Are you lying to me on purpose? Do you know that what you're saying is untrue? And if you do, that's not acceptable. You're not allowed to do that. So I've come to this and I believe it. I think a journalist is required not to lie. That's it.
في كلا الكتابين سواء سفينة الحمقى ولا الانحدار الطويل فيهما جودة للوصف تستطيع أن تصف المشهد بشكل ممتاز وواضح. الأول تحاول أن تصف من سرق المشروع، والثاني كيف انهارت الثقة في هذا المشروع إن أنا كنت قرأته بشكل جيد. لكني لم ألحظ أن الكتابين يحاول تقديم وصفة حل. دائما أنت تحاول أن تصف المشكلة ولكنك لا تعطينا الحل. هل أنت كنت قاصدا لهذه الاستراتيجية أم أنه في الأساس أنت لا تملك الحل؟
Well, I think, I've written 3 books and over a period of 25 years, and at each point, my own beliefs have changed, as they do as you age. You learn things and your opinions change. And I have arrived at the following. What is the solution, you ask? It's a 2-part solution. The first is reverence for God. We are not in charge. We did not make this world. We did not create human life. And we need to say that out loud. We are not in charge. We cannot see the future. We cannot make perfect decisions. We are human beings. We are flawed. So humility. I bow before the unknown. I don't know all the answers. We have to say that. That's the most important thing. And the second thing is to tell the truth. Do not lie to people. If you can do those two things, remember that you are not God. You are not God. Every day you should tell yourself, I am not God.
إيه.
Even people who don't believe in God should admit they're not God. And I'm not allowed to lie. If you can follow those two rules, I think that you can save any civilization.
إن أنا لست إله وأنا أصدق دائما ولا أكذب. هذه هي هنا تكمن الحلول عند تاكر كارلسون. سأستمر في هذا الحوار معك. سأنتقل أكثر إلى تجربتك بداية من CNN، ولكن بعد هذا الفاصل سأخذ فاصل قصير ثم نذهب إلى شاشة الليوان. انتظرونا، لا تذهبوا بعيدا. حياكم الله من جديد في شاشة الليوان مع ضيفي تاكر كارلسون. تاكر، في شاشة الليوان في مجموعة من المواد استعرضها ونتحاور عن أبرز ما فيها، في مفاتيح للحوار. نشوف أول تجربة في CNN ونتحدث عنها إن أذنت لي.
I felt that wasn't fair, and I should come here and tell you that it's not so much that it's bad as it's hurting America. So I wanted to come here today and say, wait. Here's just what I wanted to tell you guys.
Yeah.
Stop. Stop hurting America. Okay, now and come work for us, because we, as the people.
How do you pay?
The people, not well.
Better than CNN, I'm sure.
But you can sleep at night. See, the thing is, we need your help. Right now you're helping the politicians and the corporations, and we're left out there to mow our lawns. You just said we're too rough on them when they make mistakes. No, you're not too rough on them. You're part of their strategies. You're partisan, what do you call it, hacks.
Wait, John, let me tell you something valuable that I think we do that I'd like to see you do.
Something valuable?
Yeah, no, it's nice when politicians, and I'll tell you, when politicians come on, it's nice to get them to try and answer the question. And in order to do that, we try and ask them pointed questions. I want to contrast our questions with some questions you asked John Kerry recently.
If you want to compare your show to a comedy show, you're more than welcome to.
Here's the point.
If that's your goal,
no, it's not.
يعني تجربة CNN تاكر بدأت يمكن تقريبا من عام 2000 وتقريبا عام 2000، بس برنامج كروس فاير في 2001 كانت يمكن هي التجربة الأهم في CNN. من وجهة نظري الشخصية أنه هذه التجربة لم تكن ناجحة. لم يكن تاكر كارلسون كلاعب مناظرات، يعني هذا هو المكان الصحيح لتاكر كارلسون. هذا رأيي، أنها لم تكن تجربة ناجحة. برأيك هل هي ناجحة؟
I think that there were very serious problems with CNN, with my behavior on CNN. I think that I unwittingly became a tool of forces I didn't understand. I've been upset about it ever since. I've apologized for it. I'm sorry that Jon Stewart that exchange is the thing that is remembered from that show, because I felt then and I feel now that he was actually what he was accusing me of being. He was the tool of the powerful, and I believe that and I think it now. And it's not a defense of my own shortcomings, which are many, then and now. It's only to say that Jon Stewart has never been fired for asking questions that made people uncomfortable, and never would be, because he never would do that. Of course, Jon Stewart has spent his entire career to the present day going along with what the people in power want. And so it's difficult for me to see him as a truth teller then or now, because he is not. And I say that with some bitterness, not a great deal of bitterness. I mean, he's kind of forgotten at this point. But it's still hard for me to take. I will take that lecture from an honest person any day. But I have trouble taking it from him.
أنا كان ملفت بالنسبة لي وإحنا نعرض الفيديو أنك لم تنظر إليه، كنت تستمع له وكنت يعني لا تريد النظر إلى تلك الحلقة.
Yes,
لماذا؟
it's painful for me. And it's painful for that reason. I think there are, well, I don't think, I know, because I've said it many times, there are many things I've done in my life that I'm ashamed of. My support for the Iraq War is at the top of that list. I supported the Iraq War on that show. I think that's something that I should apologize for, and I have, and I mean it. I wish I hadn't done that. It was wrong. To be lectured about the truth by a liar is difficult for me. That's why I can't look at it. So if I was speaking to an honest man, I would say what I always say, which is, I know, I'm sorry that I did that.
هل هو هل رأي هذا جون ستيوارت ولا لا هذا كان رأي CNN أو كان رأي اليسار؟ من كان رأيه؟ هل هي كانت محاولة لإيقاع بك أم لا؟ لأن هذا كانت هو رأي شخصي تبنته CNN، اكتشفت أنه هذا النوع من المهاترات الحزبية السطحية لا تخدم، ولذلك أوقفوا البرنامج بعدها بأشهر.
I don't know. I left the program before it ended. And I left the network before the program ended and moved somewhere else. But the format wasn't working. I think the reason it wasn't working had nothing to do with Jon Stewart's analysis. I think it wasn't working because by 2005, which is I think the year it was canceled, Americans had decided they didn't want to hear the other side. The country had become so polarized that people wanted to hear their own beliefs repeated back to them. They did not want to hear the other side at all. And that is a reflection of the deepening divisions in American society, which are now very obvious, and weren't quite as obvious then. But you're right. It is painful for me to see that because I have no respect at all for Jon Stewart. And I want to be the kind of man who can take correction. And if someone I respect corrects me, I just have to say this again, because I think we should all be humble. I don't like it. I never liked being humbled, ever. But I will force myself to be humbled because I think it's essential. But I'm not going to be humbled by him.
الألم دائما علمتنا الحياة أن الآلام تولد عندنا أفكار جديدة لم نكن لنصل إليها من دون هذا الألم. ما هو المعنى الجديد الذي اكتشفته بعد كل هذا الألم من حلقة ستيوارت التي أنهت البرنامج ثم أنهت مسيرة تاكر كارلسون لاحقا في CNN؟
Well, I will say the benefit of that interview was that it was humiliating to me, and I did not think I lost the debate. I still don't think it. But that interview was considered deeply shameful and very embarrassing to me, and it was used by the media to attack me, fairly and unfairly. And so I was definitely reduced by that video. I was brought down. And I think that's important. I was a very young man when I was in my 20s when I went into television. I became famous very fast. And I don't think that's good for a man. Maybe you've had this experience yourself. People are all of a sudden telling you you're great. And on your worst days, you can start to believe them. And that's not good for you at all. It's bad for your soul. So it's good to be humiliated. I think it's very important. I have been humiliated many times. So, I thank God for that. But that was one of the most profound humiliations, especially because of my view of the person who did it.
هي محطة فشل على طريق النجاح.
Yeah, it's very important. And I've known, a lot of successful people. I've known every successful person in my country, almost. And the ones who've never been humiliated are very difficult to have dinner with. It's very important. And sometimes it's illness, or sometimes it's problems in their personal lives. Sometimes it's professional problems. But, people who've been caught doing bad things, and they go to prison, or there's a sex scandal, they get caught committing adultery, and it's humiliating. It destroys them. But it also, in some cases, makes them better. Or they get some terrible illness and they almost die. I know many people like this, and they come back and they're calmer and wiser. And that is a great blessing.
في بلدنا يقولون الضربة التي لا تكسر ظهرك تقويه. سأنتقل إلى محطة أخرى من أهم المحطات في حياة تاكر المهنية، فوكس نيوز. دعنا نشاهد هذا المقطع.
But at the same time, we shouldn't let our focus on voting machines distract us from all that happened earlier this month. The 2020 presidential election was not fair. No honest person would claim that it was fair. On many levels, the system was rigged against one candidate and in favor of another. And it was rigged in ways that were not hidden from view. We all saw it happen. The media openly colluded with the Democratic nominees. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris refused to explain what they would do if they were elected. That's never happened before in any presidential election in American history, but the media allowed them to do it. At the same time, beginning in the spring, Democrats used our public health emergency for nakedly partisan ends. They punished Trump supporters for trying to gather, but they exempted their own activists, rioters and vandals from BLM and Antifa, from the COVID lockdowns entirely. They said this out loud. The restrictions they did enforce crushed America's small businesses, the heart of the Republican Party. And yet they made their own donors fantastically richer. Jeff Bezos alone saw his net worth jump by more than $70 billion during the pandemic.
تاكر، لن أتحدث عن بداية التجربة من 2009 إلى 2016. يعني يمكن تلك الفترة كانت هي مساحة تختبرك فيها فوكس نيوز، وأنت تختبر حدودك معها. أريد أن أتحدث من 2016، ففترة الذروة في تاكر كارلسون في برنامج كارلسون تونايت. كانت، وهذه أريد أن قراءتي الشخصية نعرضها عليك حتى تحاول أن تعدل لي فيها وأن تعطيني كثير من الأشياء التي أريد أن أفهمها في طريقة صناعتك للمادة الإعلامية الموجودة. فكرة الرواية، فكرة تعريف من يملك الرواية، هذا أحد الأساليب التي تستخدمتها في كثير من الحلقات. للحظات كنت أشعر أن الرواية أخطر من الحقيقة.
Well, I can only speak for how I created that episode and the rest, and that was by trying to shield myself from other people's narratives. I try to get away from what other people are saying because I want my mind to be clear. So I spend a great deal of time alone as I think and write. I try to. I do every day. And I don't want to be influenced by lies. I really don't, and I'm afraid of it. So I do not read the American media ever. I don't read our biggest newspapers. I don't have a television. I don't want to know what they're saying. I have other ways of getting information, and I may be wrong, but I want my perceptions, which taken together add up to a narrative, to a story, an explanation of what we're looking at. I want them to be mine alone, and I want them to be honest above all. And so those were my views, and people can agree or disagree, but I did not want, because what I understood, what I realized after when I did that, I had spent 30 years in this business, so I felt like I understood it fairly well. And what I understood was other people were writing the narrative. They were deciding what the story was, as you would write a movie. And then they were casting actors to make them. You've been in movies, you know. And that's fine for entertainment. That is not fine for news. In fact, it's an offense against the idea of news. And I was very offended by that. And I decided that I'm going to construct my own narrative based on what I think is actually true. What are we watching here? We have 50 facts, put them on the table. What are they add up to?
بس قنوات التلفزيون قد لا تريد الحقيقة، تريد الصدام القابل للبيع.
I used to think that. I used to believe they were looking to increase their viewership and increase their revenue. I used to believe it was a business. And then I hosted the most popular show in the history of cable television in the United States, and I was fired at the height of my popularity. So obviously, that's not true. I mean, I guess we know that's not true. So what is true? Well, I'm partly guessing, but I'm not just guessing when I say the point of the big American media companies is to tell a certain story on behalf of certain people, to create a narrative to protect and to advance the interests of whoever the shareholders are in that company, both literally the shareholders, the people who own the equities, the publicly traded stocks, but also the deeper shareholders, like the people who kind of control our society. And it's no different from any other country. They're all that way. I just didn't realize, as I've said, that my country was the same as every other. So once I realized that, I decided okay, I'm probably going to get fired if I do this. I knew I was going to get fired. I could feel it. Nobody told me, but I knew it. But I'm in my 50s. My children are grown. Why do I care? I don't owe anyone any money. So I might as well just say what I think is true. And I did. And I got fired. So, but we learned it's not just about profit or viewers.
لكنه أسلوبك لم يكن أسلوبا عاديا. كان أسلوب مميز في أكثر من جهة. واحدة منها اللي أنت تحدثت عنه قبل قليل، أن تتحدث عن الناس. في حديثك عن الناس ليس عن النخب، عندك قدرة في تحويل الغضب، واختلف أو اتفق معي في هذا الوصف، إلى هوية نفسية سياسية. صحيح أنك تلبسها بلباس عقلاني على طريقتك، لكن إن صح التعبير أنت لا تشعل النار، ولكنك تنثر الوقود في كل مكان.
Well, I would say that one of my many faults is that I have trouble controlling my anger. And so there have been countless times, many, many times over the years where I have been cruel to people. I have overstated things. I've said more than I actually know because I get mad. And I'm sorry that I've done that. And I think that that's wrong. So I'll just say that. And I can think of times when I've been mean to people, cruel to people, dismissive of people. And I regret doing that. But I would also say that my feelings are sincere and that I do deeply emotionally identify with the United States. I'm from there. My family has been there for hundreds of years. I really love the country. Well, my understanding of it, my experience of it, and I feel like people that I know personally and care about have been hurt by our leaders, and that makes me very, very angry. And my challenge, my job in the last several years has been to try and calm my anger, try to be constructive, don't attack people for the sake of attacking people. I'm working on this. It's not easy, but it's something that I really feel. I mean it. It's not an act. I'm not an actor. I'm not joking at all.
وأنا هنا لا أريد أن أجنح بالحوار إلى شكل من أشكال المحاكمة. أنا أريد أن أتعرف على أسرار قدرتك المذهلة في صناعة السرديات، خاصة في زمن فقد الناس وخاصة الأمريكيون فيه الثقة في السرديات الكبرى.
Well, it's very simple. I gather a lot of information, and I gather information not by reading the news outlets or watching them, but by talking to people. And I talk to hundreds of people every week, and that's my job. I get paid for this. I'm, probably wouldn't do it if it wasn't my job, but it is. So I talk to a lot of people, and I travel a lot, and I always have, and I believe in that. I believe in traveling and seeing things and talking to people with different perspectives. So I gather a lot of information, and I'm not always sure what it means. What does it add up to? What is this? I don't know. And then every single day, I try to sit in silence and think about what does this add up to? And sometimes I don't know the answer, but other times I do. But that's my goal. I did it yesterday. I did a 1 hour monologue with no teleprompter yesterday on something I've been thinking about. And I could be wrong, but these are my thoughts. And so I just try and sit. I had a 13-hour airplane ride and I didn't sleep at all. And I just thought the entire plane, like, what is this? What are we looking at? And that's how I come up with it.
لا، لأنه بالطرف المقابل أنا حاولت أتأمل الجمهور الذي يتابعك. جمهور ليس جمهور عادي، جمهور كبير وجمهور يتابعك باهتمام. حاولت أن أقرأ هذا الجمهور، لاحظت أن الجمهور يعني لا يتابع تاكر لمعرفة الحقيقة، هو يبحث عن الاعتراف. أنت لغتك تجعلهم يشعرون أنك تتكلم باسمهم. أنت لا تقدم معلومة حقيقية، أنت تقدم معلومة نفسية، اتساق شعوري يشعر المتلقي أنك تمثله، أنك تعترف به أكثر من أنك تعطيه معلومة هو يؤتيها. ولذلك هو لا يريد أن يسمع الحقيقة، هو يريد أن يسمع أنك تؤمن به وتعترف به. هي رحلة اعتراف. صحح لي إذا كنت أنا غلطان.
It's hard for me to know because I'm not in the audience and I don't watch myself. I never have. It makes me uncomfortable to watch myself. It feels like narcissism, self-love. I don't watch myself. So I'm not exactly sure what people think of me. I try not to think about what people think of me. I care what my wife thinks about me, and that's about it. But I do care. I have people in mind when I write and when I think about what things mean. I have individuals in mind, people I know and care about. And I sincerely believe that they have been wronged, that their trust has been violated, that they've been stolen from, that they have been lied to, and that they have been dismissed and hurt by people who have no right to do that to them, who are not their betters. I feel that deeply, and I am extremely upset about it. That's not an act, it's real. And so you may be onto something, you may be right, I don't know, but I do speak from that perspective. When I say, COVID, for example, was a lie that was used to hurt people, I know people who were hurt by it, who took a poison vaccine because the government required them to and had heart attacks. I know one person who died, who I knew personally. So I'm mad about that. And I say that because it's real.
وأين الحد الفاصل بين تمثيل الناس وبين استغلالهم؟ أين الحد الفاصل؟
Well, I think it's very easy to exploit people. It's one of the reasons I don't like a lot of our leaders, because I feel that they're exploiting people. I would say I've never been in it for the money. I've made enough money. I'm not involved in any weird business undertaking. I'm not a businessman. So I've never, people can believe me or not, there's something I can do about it, but I've never been motivated by money. And I don't want political power. I don't want to run for office or be a senator or president at all. So it's possible that I'm exploiting people, but I don't really know what I'm getting out of it. I mean, at this point in my life, I don't owe anybody anything, and I could retire, and I have a lot of interests, but I feel that I have a mission, and I'm going to keep doing it until someone stops me, whether it's God or the temporal authorities. So, I mean, maybe I'm exploiting people. I don't want to, but I don't know what I'm getting out of it. What I've gotten out of it is like the inability to walk through airports. So from my perspective, it's like not a great trade.
أنا لا أريد أن أوقف عند موضوع كوفيد، سأتجاوزها لسؤال بظني وأهم على موضوع الانتخابات اللي شافناه قبل شوي، على منتخبات 2020. لم تكن تغطيتك لم تكن تغطية عادية، كانت محط اهتمام الكثيرين في تلك اللحظة، كانت لحظة فارقة في مسيرة تاكر المهنية. الآن نحن نضعها خلفنا ب5-6 سنوات. سؤالي لك، هل سرقت الانتخابات من ترامب في 2020؟
Well, I would say it was an unfair election. Of course, it was an unfair election for a lot of reasons. Was it stolen in the sense that electronic voting machines were hacked and the numbers changed? I can't prove that. Any software can be hacked. We see evidence of that all around us every single day. The Pentagon's computers were hacked. I'm sure the Saudi government's computers have been hacked. I don't know that, but computers can be hacked. The iPhone can be hacked. So any honest person will admit that voting software could be hacked. So if you're serious about choosing your leaders in elections, of course you don't have electronic voting because it's not secure. And yet we do have electronic voting in the United States, despite the fact it's not secure, despite the fact you can't tell me that it's unhackable. It can be hacked, but we have it anyway. Why? And no one can answer that question. And so I would say we have electronic voting precisely because it can be hacked, obviously.
يعني كأنك تقول تريدنا أن نفهم أنها سرقت، لكن لا تريد أن تقول أنها سرقت.
Oh no, if I had evidence, if I had proof that it was stolen, I would just say so. I don't. But what I would say is that the doubt that Americans have, tens of millions of Americans believe it was stolen or could have been stolen, makes your system inoperable. It doesn't work. People have to believe in it. And if you want them to believe in it, remove doubt. And electronic voting can never be fully safe. And that's why many countries don't have it. Countries that are more serious about giving people the vote than we are, apparently. So, yeah, I would say that.
في أبريل 2023 غادرت فوكس نيوز مرغما. متى شعرت أنك أثقل، أن صوتك أثقل من المنصة التي تقف عليها؟
Did I feel that my voice burdened the platform? Well, I never felt that way. I was completely surprised. I had no idea I was going to be fired. I had no idea. I woke up early. I wrote my script. I was sitting in my living room. And I got a call from at 11 a.m. from the president of Fox News who said, we're canceling the show. I said, why? I had no idea this was coming. And the president said to me, I can't tell you why. And no one has ever told me why in the almost 3 years since. And I'm not mad about it. I'm very grateful that I was fired. I'm thankful. I'm much happier. I think I have learned a lot. And it's been a very interesting and meaningful and productive time in my life. So I'm thankful that I got fired, and I'm glad I'm out of there. But I never had any idea that they were going to do that.
يعني إلى اليوم لا تعرف لماذا؟ لأنه كانت هناك تكهنات. هل هي بسبب تغطيتك لي أو حديثك عن 6 يناير؟ هل هي بسبب كوفيد؟ هل هي بسبب انتخابات 2020؟ هل هي بسبب دعوة التشهير اللي دفعت فوكس $787 مليون كتعويض أو كتسوية مع الشركة التي رفعت عليها قضية؟ هل هي بسبب الرسائل التي خرجت وأنت تتكلم عن إدارة فوكس نيوز؟ كل هذه خرجت كأسباب محتملة. ماذا ترجح أنت منها؟
It's like a murder mystery where there are too many suspects. Anyone could have killed him. We don't know. All of that is possible. I opposed sending American tax dollars to Ukraine. I believe the government of Ukraine is corrupt. I don't think the United States should be involved. I believe that the Biden administration started that war on purpose. I said all that. Fox ownership was mad at me for saying that. They told me so. So that may have played a role also. I really don't know why. And I'll never know why, most likely. And I don't care.
من اتخذ القرار؟ روبرت مردوخ أو ابنه لاكلان أو الرئيس التنفيذية؟
Well, I know this. It was Rupert Murdoch, the owner. of Fox News, the largest shareholder, the creator of the company, and a very nice man and someone I still like. I'm not mad at him. But he made the decision. He did not tell me why. I talked to him later. I called him and thanked him for the 15 years I worked there. I really enjoyed it. And I thanked him for supporting me, even though he fired me. And we left on very happy terms. But he never told me why. But he made that decision, yes.
يعني لو فرضنا أنك شخص مستقل تنظر إلى المشهد من الخارج، هل أخطأ تاكر كارلسون في إدارة الرواية أم أخطأت فوكس نيوز في إدارة المخاطر في هذه القضية؟
I really don't know. I think ultimately we were incompatible. We could never work together. Over time, Fox had just offered me a 10-year contract. The people who run the company. So I think they thought I was going to stay, but the owners understood what I now understand, which is I wasn't suited for it. And their goal was to convince Americans of certain things, certain narratives, as you say. They weren't doing that to get higher viewership or to sell more ads. They were doing that for other reasons. And I didn't agree with those stories because they were lies. And I wasn't willing to pretend that I did believe in them. And so, of course, we can't work together.
يعني أنت طردت لأنك تريد أن تقول الحقيقة وهناك من يريد ألا تقول الحقيقة.
Of course. Of course. And that's okay. I didn't own Fox News. I didn't start Fox News. It wasn't my company. It would be like if I went over to your house for dinner and I insulted your wife, you would say, please leave my home. It's my home. It was their home and they didn't want me there. That's okay. That's their right. But again, I'm glad because I shouldn't have been there.
بعدها أنت انتقلت إلى منصة إكس ويوتيوب وعملت مقابلات، وكانت هناك واحدة من أهم اللقاءات في تاريخ الإعلام الحديث، ليس في تاريخ تاكر كارلسون، اللي هي لقائك الشهير مع الرئيس الروسي بوتين. دعنا نشاهد جزءا من هذا اللقاء ثم نتحدث عنه.
Who blew up Nord Stream?
You for sure.
I was busy that day. Nate, do you have I did not blow up Nord Stream. Thank you, though.
У вас лично, может быть, есть алиби, у вас лично.
You personally may have an alibi, but the CIA has no such alibi.
Do you have evidence that NATO or the CIA did it?
Знаете,
You know, I won't get into details, but people always say in such cases, look for someone who is interested. But in this case, we should not only look for someone who is interested, but also for someone who has capabilities. Because there may be many people interested, but not all of them are capable of sinking to the bottom of the Baltic Sea and carrying out this explosion. As the Americans requested, Yanukovych did use neither the armed forces nor the police, yet the armed opposition committed a coup in Kiev. What is that supposed to mean? Who do you think you are? I wanted to ask the then US leadership.
With the backing of whom?
With the backing of CIA, of course. The organization you wanted to join back in the day, as I understand. We should thank God they didn't let you in. Although, it is a serious organization. I understand. My former vis-a-vis in the sense that I served in the first main directorate, Soviet Union's intelligence service. They have always been our opponents. A job is a job.
أنت كنت تريد أن تذهب للCIA؟
You know, I haven't watched that since it happened. I had forgotten he said that. Yes, I applied to CIA as a young man in college. And no, I did not get in. I made the mistake of admitting that once.
وهذا من حسن حظنا.
I should never have said that.
لا أظن أني سأستضيفك اليوم.
I'm definitely not in the CIA, and I have no contact with the CIA. I have a lot of criticism of the CIA. But I should never have said that, because I have been trying to explain ever since that I didn't actually join, and this is all some sort of op. But no, I've never watched that interview. I did the interview because I felt that it was important that Americans, specifically American news consumers, American citizens, hear from the person they were having a war against. The United States has been at war with Russia now for 4 years. We pretend that we're not at war with Russia. We are at war with Russia. We have funded and directed the Ukrainian forces against Russia. And I'm opposed to that. I have been from the beginning, but I was even more opposed to the idea that Americans were not allowed to know what this was. They have an absolute right to know. And that's why I did that interview. And there was a great attempt to prevent me from doing it, but including by the CIA, factually, but I did it anyway.
كان هناك هجوم شاسع وقاسي للغاية. يعني بقدر ما كانت هناك متابعة واسعة على مستوى العالم لهذا اللقاء، لكن كان هناك هجوم شرس حتى من المحافظين، حتى من القريبين من تاكر كارلسون عن هذا اللقاء. يعني معرف وصفوها أنه يعني هذه دعاية مجانية لواحد من أعداء أمريكا بشكل أو بآخر. ويعني هل انتهكت أنت محظورا للأمن القومي بهذا اللقاء بشكل أو بآخر؟
Well, I certainly violated the taboos. The people who've harmed national security would not include me. It would be various national security advisors and secretaries of state, members of the United States Senate, a few of our presidents. They have all put American national security in peril through their foolishness and their selfishness. And so, no, I have not imperiled national security. I'm trying to strengthen it by letting the population of my country know what their leaders are doing. And of course, they don't like that, so they attack me and call me names. But I'm resistant to that at this point. You know, it has no effect on me. I would say of the conservatives, the so-called conservatives who are mad at me for speaking to another adult, I would remind them that they're not in charge of who I speak to or of what I think. I am not a liberal. I've always been a conservative. And the Biden administration decided that Russia was our enemy. I didn't decide that. I have no interest in being enemies with Russia. I don't know why we would be. I don't think that it helps the United States to be in a war with Russia. We've merely driven them to China, out of our orbit into the orbit of our chief global competitor. So it's actually been a disaster for us. It's weakened the US dollar dramatically. Nothing about it has been good for us. And moreover, having visited Russia a number of times, I can say that there's a lot about Russia that is great. And I was under a lot of pressure not to say that, but it's true, so I said it anyway. But no, of course we should not be enemies with Russia. Who benefits from that? Americans? No, they don't. Some of our government shareholders benefit from that, but you know.
بس هل كنت تريد الترويج لروسيا؟ لأنه نحن شاهدناك في محطات المترو، تشاهد انظروا كيف هذا المترو نظيف، في محلات سوبر ماركت كنت تقول انظروا هذه الأشياء رخيصة ليست مثل أسعارها في الولايات المتحدة إلى آخره. هل كان من أهدافك هو الترويج بشكل أو بآخر لروسيا في ذلك التوقيت؟
My goal was to shame the leadership of my country. Russia, which you've told us is backward and primitive, it's basically this African country with massive oil reserves. That's what they told us. Is actually doing a much better job in some ways serving its citizens than the Biden administration is doing serving American citizens. That's true. They don't like to hear it. That's not my problem. Moreover, the condition of your cities really matters. It matters because millions of people live in those cities. And if they're dirty and dangerous and chaotic, those are not small things. Those are the most important things. And Moscow is the largest city in Europe, and it's by far the nicest. I've been to every city in Europe. I spent my life traveling. It is by far the nicest city in Europe. No other city in Europe comes close to Moscow, especially at that scale. It's larger than New York City, and it's much nicer than New York City. I'm not moving there because I'm not Russian. But it is a challenge to my leaders. Before you tell me Russia is my enemy, why don't you make New York as safe and clean and pretty as Moscow is? Why don't you do that instead? Why don't you improve the lives of your own citizens first? And then you can lecture me about how this or that foreign leader is evil. And of course, they don't like to hear that because it's much easier to tell me that some other person is evil. Putin's evil. MBS is evil. Kim Jong-un is evil. Okay, fine. But your duty is to make my country better, and you're not. And so shame on you. That's why they don't like me, and I don't care.
لكنه كان أيضا من ضمن الاحتجاجات على تلك اللقاء أنك مثلا في أول نص ساعة تركته بدون مقاطعة يتحدث كأنها محاضرة عن تاريخ روسيا، وكانت يعني المناقشات يعني أنت محاور جيد وتستطيع إحراج ضيوفك في بعض النقاط. كنت ناعما للغاية، لم تسأله مثلا عن انتهاكات حقوق الإنسان في روسيا، لم تتكلموا عن جرائم الحرب في أوكرانيا، لم تسأله مثلا عن يعني الخصوم السياسيين أو الأشياء من هذا القبيل كيف يتعامل معهم. كان هناك انتقادات من هذا النوع أنه تاكر كارلسون يعني كان سهلا ولم يكن يناقش بحدة ولم يكن غاب حينما كان يجب أن يحضر السؤال القوي.
Right. Well, I think people who want to debate Putin should call him up and debate him. Do your own interview. You know, that's my view. My goal, I've debated a lot of people, enough, maybe more than any other living journalist. And so you have different goals for different interviews, right? But in this interview, my feeling was and remains that Vladimir Putin has spent a lot of time answering questions about his human rights record, and our media has certainly spent the last number of years telling us about his human rights record, and I'm not here to defend it. I don't live in Russia. I don't care to live in Russia. I prefer to live in a country with the First Amendment. My goal for this interview was to allow Americans to hear his perspective, which I think is important. At some point, we have to allow people to speak for themselves. And then I can allow my viewers to decide whether they believe it or not. But I'm not going to be bullied into sitting across from an adult man and telling him what he thinks. I'm going to allow him to explain it, and I'm going to respect my viewers enough to believe they'll decide whether or not it's the truth. They have internet access. They can come to their own conclusions. No one had heard Putin speak. I mean, since the war started, we've been at war for 2 years with this country, and not one American had heard him speak. And I wanted to change that, and I did. And so from my perspective, mission accomplished. And others who want to go yell at him about, I don't know, his treatment of his political opponents, it's an autocracy, obviously. He's been in power for 26 years. He's also far more popular among Russians and among the population of the eastern side of the world than any American president in a long time. So that's just a fact. And you should ask yourself, why is that? I'm not saying he's better. Again, I don't live in Russia. I'm not Russian. What I'm saying is I want leaders in the United States to improve the United States of America. And they're not. That is not my fault. It's theirs. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised that they're mad at me for saying that, because no one wants to be criticized, but they deserve it. So I'm going to do it anyway.
على مستوى الشخصي ما رأيك ببوتين؟ بوتين الذي رأيته وقابلته.
What do I think of him? I think he's a remarkable leader. I mean, you'd have to say he's the most successful leader in the world without any close competition. And here's the measurement I'm using to arrive at that. And the measurement is not how much free speech does he allow. He doesn't win that contest. Though I have to say, 3 times as many Britons, residents of UK, have been arrested in the last year for criticizing their government on Facebook as Russians have been arrested. And the population of Russia is twice the UK. So it's like, actually, Russia's less repressive than the UK, but whatever. No, I'm using one measure. Has he improved the country? He took over in 2000. That was the second or third poorest country in Europe after like Albania and Ukraine. And now, it's this kind of remarkable thing. He did that. He ran the country. He also, by the way, took the world's largest landmass, which it is. It's the biggest country in the world by size geographically. And he kept it together. 20% of Russia is Muslim. 20%. He had 2 wars with the Muslim internal republic called Chechnya. 2 wars. And he has somehow kept this Orthodox Christian country that is 1/5 Muslim whole and united. How do we do that? Vladimir Putin has promoted the Russian Orthodox Church for 20 years. So, of course, the Russian Orthodox love him. But so do a lot of the Muslims. They love him too. And so do his former enemies in Chechnya. You try that. I'll try that. I don't know how you do that. That is remarkable. I don't care how much you love Zelensky or hate Putin or whatever. You have to, if you're an honest person, say, that is an amazing feat. And that requires flexibility and intellectual dexterity and wisdom and longitudinal thinking. And any American or European leader who says that's irrelevant is a fool. Is a fool.
لكن على مستوى خارج اللقاء، إيش الكواليس اللي ما أطلعتنا عليها وحدثت بينك وبينه قبل أو بعد اللقاء؟
Well, I had a long conversation with him off camera that I found very, very, very interesting. And I didn't know what to think of him or Russia before I got there. I didn't go there to help the Russians, of course. I went there to help the Americans, to help American citizens understand what was going on.
مع أن هناك وجهة نظر أخرى، يعني هيلاري كلينتون تقول ما فعلته هو من الطابور الخامس لبوتين، منتقدة إياك طبعا.
Yeah, of course. I mean, right. She's going to motive. She thinks she understands what my motives are. I could certainly insult Hillary Clinton, but I'm not going to. I think it's fair to let her record as Secretary of State speak for itself. And by speak for itself, I'm speaking of Libya, which was a country before she took the job and now is an open-air slave market. So
نعود إلى الكواليس. نعود إلى الكواليس.
Okay, that was
لا تريد أن تتحدث عن هيلاري.
It's like being criticized on foreign policy grounds by someone who was caused that much death and destruction is not.
ما هو الملفت الذي وجدته مع بوتين؟ هناك أريد أن تكشف شيئا لم تكشفه عن بوتين، عن الأشياء التي كانت في الكواليس خلف الكاميرا.
He's very deep. He's not shallow at all. He's not shallow at all. Now, governing Russia is extremely complex, and there are many ethnic and religious differences, as I just noted, but there are also competing power centers. Any kingdom, any country is difficult. This country is difficult. Every country is difficult to run. And so he is political, and he has a political sense. But he also has thoughts about the course of civilizations and history, and he is not a shallow person. And what I have found from interviewing and talking to and eating with a lot of leaders, political leaders, is that most of them are just interested in politics. They just want to talk about some struggle with some other powerful person over who gets power. Very few of them are interested in the bigger questions, and he is one of those.
أنت تحدثت بعدها في لقاء، تكلمت أن روسيا قد تفكر جديا إذا استمرت الحرب بأن تضرب بريطانيا أو ألمانيا. هل هذا بناء على معلومة هو قالها لك؟
Well, I interviewed a close advisor to President Putin recently, Mr. Slutsky, who was a longtime advisor to Putin, who said on camera, as he has said many other times, if this continues, we will have no choice but to use nuclear weapons against Great Britain and Germany, which is horrifying. I can't imagine many things worse than that. I pray that doesn't happen. But I felt that was such a serious thing to say that I should interview him so people know that that's what they're saying. I don't know whether it's true, but nations over the last 80 years have almost never publicly threatened to launch nuclear weapons against each other. This is a brand new development. And so I think it's important for the Europeans and the Americans and the Ukrainians to understand that they're saying this. Do they mean it? I can't assess. But that is a different level of rhetoric.
لماذا لم تعمل لقاء مع زيلينسكي الرئيس الأوكراني؟
Oh, I've tried. Probably a half dozen times, 6 or 7 times. I have written letters. I wrote him a handwritten letter. I've spoken to his advisors. I have been trying to get a Zelensky interview for 4 years, constantly. I would talk to Zelensky anywhere, anytime. He refuses. And he refuses because he can't answer even the most basic questions. Like, did the military, did your generals in Ukraine sell NATO weapons to other countries? Did you take the weapons and sell them for profit? And the answer is yes, they did. They did. That's a fact. Yes, including in the Middle East, to a couple of different groups in the Middle East. That's a fact. And I would ask,
وهل كانت مجموعات إرهابية التي بيعت لهم؟
I mean, it depends how you define terroristic, but I mean, look, sending weapons, especially weapons that are effectively given to you for a specific purpose, selling them to others so you can profit, creates instability in the world. We've seen this repeatedly, right? Especially weapons like drones, surface-to-air missiles. I mean, you can really cause a lot of problems, and they did that. The Ukrainians did that, and they've lied about it, and many in the United States have lied about it, but it happened. So I would ask, that'd be my first question, and I know that it's true. So he's no interest in talking to me. He never will talk to me. Sorry.
رئيس وزراء كندا جاستن تحدث بلغة تشكيكية حيالة. قال أنه آرتي الروسية دعمت تاكر كارلسون بمبالغ بملايين الدولارات. ما صحة هذه الاتهامات التي قالها جاستن ترودو؟
Did I take money from Russia? No. That's a lie. It's a dangerous lie to say that. He is a liar on the deepest level. And I'm trying to restrain myself here and not be cruel about his personal life, but Justin Trudeau is a liar. But for a head of state to say something like that, when they know it's not true, they have an intel service. If I took money from Russia or Saudi Arabia or Qatar or UAE or any other country, they would know instantly because they surveil us on our phones. They surveil us on our phones. So if you're having an affair or taking money, I mean, they know. And everyone knows they know. And let's stop lying about it. So if I took money from Russia, trust me, that evidence would be in the New York Times tomorrow. And why would I take money from Russia? Not that interested in money. I'm not rich, but my goal is not to become a billionaire. I don't want to be a billionaire. I know a lot of billionaires. There's not one as happy as I am. So I don't want that. I don't know what I would do with the money. Took money from Russia. No, what they don't want to admit is that their leadership has failed. They have failed. They are inadequate. They're not capable of running countries in the modern era. And they don't want to hear that because it hurts them to hear the truth. And so they attack anyone who says it. Well, he must be kicking money from Vladimir Putin to say that. No.
وقالها في جلسة مساءلة، ليست تصريحا علنيا. قالها في جلسة مساءلة داخلية عنده.
Yeah, okay. Well, to be clear, I've been accused by many people of taking money from many governments, and I've never taken a dollar from any government. And in fact, yeah, well, I could go on about it, but I have not taken any money from any government. And if I had taken money from a government, I would just say so.
أنت تنفي. الآن انتقلت، يعني هنا سؤال مهم. أنت انتقلت من تجربة من رقابة القنوات التلفزيونية والإعلام التقليدي، قناة فوكس نيوز، إلى رقابة أخرى، إلى شكل آخر من أشكال الرقابة، إكس، يوتيوب، في برنامجك الجديد على إكس مشاهدات عالية. ولكن هناك قلق أنه هل هناك شكل من أشكال الرقابة بين الحكومة الأمريكية وبين شركات التقنية الكبيرة على هذا المحتوى؟ يعني لم ننسى بعد حساب ترامب عندما أوقف من إكس.
Yes, and not just the American government. The Israeli government primarily has put a lot of pressure on the tech companies to censor. They've said so out loud. The Prime Minister of Israel has said that repeatedly in speeches and in talks. It's on video. You can watch it. I'm sure you have. And the European governments too. It's not just the Israelis. It's the Europeans. It's the Australians. It's the Brits, the Germans, have all put pressure on these platforms to censor criticism of themselves. You know, in the end, censorship protects the powerful. They're not worried about what you say about the weakest people in society. They're worried about what you say about them. And this is true in every country. It's true here. It's true in Europe. It's true in the United States. The difference is, it's true in Russia. It's certainly true in Ukraine. The difference is the United States is a system that is designed with free speech at its heart. It's not just something we have. It's the whole point of the country. So when you eliminate free speech in the United States, you eliminate America. And so that's the difference. It would be like, I love Saudi Arabia, just don't be Muslim. And you would say, no, we're an Islamic nation. That's who we are. We have Mecca and Medina. We are Islamic. And if Saudi Arabia is not Islamic, it's not Saudi Arabia. That's what free speech is for the United States. Once you eliminate it, we're not America. And so I'm upset about it. I think I have a right to be. And yes, of course, there's a lot of censorship on every platform that you named. And it's not obvious. In other words, it's done in secret. No one admits it. But we know that it's happening still. Less than it did, I think, but it's still happening. And I'm not sure what to do about it other than to say so out loud.
كيف طبيعة الاتفاق بينك وبين إيلون ماسك؟ هل هناك أي شكل من أشكال الاتفاق بينك وبين إيلون ماسك على برنامجك؟
I have no agreement with Elon Musk. I know Elon Musk and I like him a lot, and I like many things about him, and I admire many things about him. And above all, I'm grateful to Elon Musk for restoring a great deal of free speech in the United States by opening up by buying his platform for the express purpose of returning freedom of speech to the United States. I think it had a huge effect on everyone else when he did that. And so I'm just so grateful. But I've never taken any money from Elon Musk. And I have I'm just a user of his platform. That's it. I have zero arrangement with him. And I wouldn't, not because I don't like him, but because I don't want to work for anyone ever again. I've done that.
مضطر، يعني أنت مضطر أن تكون تحت سيد ما في هذا الكوكب في النهاية.
Yeah, well, I believe that. I mean, look, most people work for somebody else. I've spent most of my life working for somebody else. I understand that. I'm not criticizing it. But you're absolutely right. In the end, we're accountable to God and God alone, period. And I didn't always believe that. My views have changed a lot about God, but I believe that now. And I don't want to work for anyone else. And also, I'm 56 years old. That's pretty old.
هناك سيد جديد يدخل على المعادلة اسمه الخوارزميات. هذه الخوارزميات تعطينا ماذا نرى وماذا لا نرى. كيف تتعامل مع هذا السيد الجديد؟
I find it very, very hard. I don't know what the answer is. I feel that they're useful. I feel that they're also manipulative. They are designed to control what people believe. They're incredibly powerful. I find that when I read social media, they affect me and my perception of the world. I resent that. I don't like that. My solution, for whatever it's worth, is I try and read less social media. I'm glad that we have it, but I'm also worried that, and I'm watching it right now in the United States.
لكن اللي ما أقصده أنه زي حوارنا أنا وياك الآن سيخرج على منصة إكس في مجموعة مثلا من التغريدات. الخوارزميات قد تبني سردية أخرى مختلفة عما حتى تحدثنا بها عن طريق انتقائية معينة لبعض المقاطع لتجعلها
Well, this has happened to me many times. A couple of months ago, someone was going on about Sharia law, and I'm of course a Christian, a pretty sincere Christian, and I don't want to live under Sharia law. I'm from America. And I made the mistake of saying Sharia law. I've been in a lot of countries with Sharia law, Islamic law, and I don't know that there are some upsides. It's safe, and I've never felt oppressed as a Christian. I'm not a Muslim. Spent a lot of time in the Islamic world. No one's ever bothered me about that. Like, it's better than lawlessness, better than what we have in parts of New York City. I shouldn't have said that. Thank goodness. All of a sudden, not an endorsement of Islam. I'm not a Muslim. But, that was repackaged into a, as you said, narrative that I was a secret Muslim. I'm a jihadi. And I'm working for Al-Qaeda or something. It's like so crazy. But in my fault, I guess I shouldn't have said that, but I did.
أوكي. أريد أن أنتقل إلى مساحة أخرى من التصريحات التي أخذت بعدا كبيرا وانتشرت انتشارا لا تتخيله، وأريد أن أناقشك فيها. دعنا نرى هذه التصريحات.
It's a dodge. It's a way of passing responsibility from yourself to somebody else. And the truth is, yes, I think Bibi is completely evil and completely destructive.
Absolutely.
He's not the only world leader who's evil and destructive, by the way, again, but he is. And he's hurting the United States, and he's destroying his own country, and I think he imperils the world. Okay, so I think that clearly they're going to try and blow up Al-Aqsa Mosque. I believe that, on the Temple Mount to build a third temple, and then you've got global war. So, like, he's a threat. There's no question he's a threat to the Trump administration, no question. But am I madder at him or Lindsey Graham? It's not even close.
I was going to mention...
Bibi Netanyahu is a foreigner, and he's trying to do what he thinks he should do for himself and his country. I get that. What's Lindsey Graham's excuse? What's Ted Cruz's excuse? Ted Cruz says right into the camera, I was elected, my main goal was to help Israel. Really? How could you get elected on a platform in which you say publicly, my main goal is to help another country? This is deranged. Where's our self-respect? So no, I am way more angry at my leaders than I am at Netanyahu. It's not even close. I don't want to even think about Netanyahu. I'm not interested. I'm very interested in how American leaders could betray their own country. That enrages me.
يعني ليس من المعتاد أن يظهر أحد من الإعلام المحافظ في أمريكا بهذه اللغة الحادة تجاه إسرائيل. يعني كانت ملفت هذا الطرح بالنسبة لنا على الأقل.
I think that's certainly how I feel. And I would happily defend that. I think I explained, I was expecting you to play a clip where I said something I didn't believe accidentally, but I believe every word of what I said. I'm not ashamed of it. I don't know why I would be. I'm not betraying.
وش الفكرة الأساسية التي تريد أن تزرعها عندنا تجاه إسرائيل؟ وين المشكلة الكبرى مع إسرائيل؟ علاقة أمريكا في إسرائيل.
The big problem is that American leaders have betrayed the United States by being more loyal to Israel than to their own country. That's the point I'm making. Obviously, I think what's happened, the mass murder in Gaza, is an atrocity. I don't think that we should defend it. All countries commit atrocities, by the way. The United States has committed atrocities. I'm sure a country has. Big countries tend to commit atrocities. It's important to say that out loud and to apologize for it. It's wrong, and we should say, that's wrong. What we did was wrong. God forgives those who ask for forgiveness. That's what I believe. But we should not make excuses for it. We should not pretend it's not wrong. That's immoral. So there's that. But what I really object to, what makes me mad, is to say it again, is when American leaders whose job it is to represent Americans are more loyal to a foreign country than they are to their own. And I mean specifically Senators Ted Cruz of Texas, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, and many others, high-level figures in the American government, are more interested in what Israel wants than what their own voters want. And I think that is unacceptable, and it can't continue because it's a betrayal of the promise of our system. And the promise of our system is we will represent you. We have a representative government. You're the American public. You own this country. We are your servants. We're going to try to make life better for you. And they have not done that. And they have instead sent billions and billions and billions of dollars to a foreign country. And none of that has helped the United States. In fact, it's hurt the United States. We got into the Iraq War in part because the Israeli government wanted us to. Thousands of Americans were killed. Trillions of dollars were spent. Decades were wasted. I don't see how the United States got anything out of the Iraq War, okay, at all. And we did that in part because Israel wanted us to do that. That is a betrayal. I'm not mad at Israel about that. I'm mad at my leaders, people like George W. Bush, people like Lindsey Graham, people like Ted Cruz, and the many people who abetted that disaster. That's my position.
لماذا تحظى إسرائيل باستثناء داخل أمريكا؟ لماذا كل هذا الالتزام الصلب تجاه إسرائيل؟ هل هو لأبعاد سياسية؟ هل هو لأبعاد دينية؟ هل هو لأبعاد مالية؟ سر هذا الالتزام الصلب.
That's a question I can't answer. That is the central question. Why? I think there are many reasons. I don't fully understand the dynamic, and I've thought about it a lot. I've been around it a lot. As I said, I spent my life from the age of 15 in Washington, D.C., 15 until I was 50. So that's a long time. And of course, I was around this dynamic a lot, and I knew a lot of people involved in it. And I didn't understand it then, and I don't fully understand it now. But I watched someone like Mike Huckabee, who's the U.S. ambassador to Jerusalem, to Israel, who I've known for 35 years. He's a very nice man. But I watch him betray the United States again and again and again by promoting Jonathan Pollard, who was a spy against the United States, who betrayed the United States, and Mike Huckabee, who's our ambassador, is helping truly the most destructive spy in American history. Why would you do that? Why would you take the side of a foreign country against your own country? Mike Huckabee, I don't think he's getting rich doing this. I don't think anyone's threatening Mike Huckabee. I don't think he's an evil man. He's a nice man. So what is this? And it does seem to me a kind of spell, a kind of hypnosis, a kind of haze that people are in, where they're doing things for reasons they don't understand. I do think there's a spiritual quality to it. But again, I don't have the answer. But it's not acceptable. The purpose of running a government is to protect and serve the country that you run. It's not to promote foreign countries, especially not irrelevant countries of 9 million people with no resources. Like there's no upside at all.
في شكل المعادلة الحالية هل ترى إسرائيل أصبحت عبء على الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية؟
Oh, it's a colossal burden to the United States. It's a colossal burden to the United States. In fact, it's the main burden we face outside of our borders. Again, I'm not angry at the Israeli government for that. The Israeli government is actually doing its job. Bibi Netanyahu is trying to help his country any way he can, and he's using the United States to do it. I understand that. I don't understand why our leaders are allowing it. For example, there is enormous pressure right now, as we speak, from the government of Israel and its many advocates in the United States to commit American resources to a regime change war against Iran. How is this in America's interest? To decapitate the government of Iran on behalf of Israel. Not to rebuild a new Iran, but just to kind of kill the people in charge and hope something better happens. To create chaos in Iran, as we have done at Israel's behest in so many countries in the region, as you well know since you live in the region. This is bad for us. This is bad for the surrounding countries. It is bad for the world. I don't think it's good for Israel, actually. I don't think Israel understands its own long-term interest very well. That's my view. But the United States has very significant problems internally right now with our economy, with national cohesion, with immigration. These are very serious problems. And the last thing we need is for our leaders to be distracted by the demands of Bibi Netanyahu to commit American money and forces to another regime change war across the world in the Middle East. This is not what we need right now. And so I am praying that American leaders will be strong enough for the first time ever to stand up to that pressure and say, no, we have problems in our country that deserve our attention and our money. And we're going to, if you want to go blow up the government of Iran, good luck. But it's not our job. And we have bigger problems.
ألا تخشى أن تصبح أو أن تلقى مصير جوزيف سوبران؟ تتذكر جوزيف سوبران في التسعينات والثمانينات عندما كان يعني منحازا ضد إسرائيل وكان عنده خطاب ضد إسرائيل داخل الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، في النهاية نبذ وخسر الكثير بسبب هذه الآراء. ألا تخشى أن تكون يعني أن تلقى نفس النتيجة ونفس المصير؟
Well, I'm not being falsely brave when I say I don't fear anything, actually, other than disgracing myself in front of God and my family. That's my only real fear. By the way, I could do that because I'm just a man. And I do fear that. Do I fear rejection by people I have no respect for? No, of course not. Do I fear death? No, not really. So no, I don't have a fear of being canceled. I'm sure that I will be. What I have a fear of is the decline of the United States and the country where my children live. I have 4 children. And I want their country to be strong and free and prosperous. And that's in question right now. So that's what I fear.
زميلي عبدالله جابر في الفريق رسم كاريكاتير، قلنا له أنه ضيفي في هذه الحلقة هو تاكر كارلسون. ارسم لنا كاريكاتير كعادتك. رسم هذه الكاريكاتير، أريد أن أشاهده أنا وياك.
That's pretty funny.
الشخص الذي يحرك العالم، هل هناك من يحرك الرئيس ترامب غير مصلحة أمريكا أولاً؟
I don't think that I have a lot of influence over our president. You know, I'm not a political figure. I hold no office. I have no authority of any kind.
لكن وليس لديك نفوذ؟
I have no power at all. I have zero power. I command no army. I have no budget. Except my own checking account, which is not huge. And no, I have no power.
لا هناك يعني حتى في الصحافة الأمريكية، حتى في نيويورك تايمز يتحدث على أنه العلاقة المباشرة بين تاكر كارلسون وترامب هي مفتاح للنفوذ، مفتاح لنفوذ تاكر. حتى يتحدثوا عن أنه ترشيح نائب الرئيس كان لك دور في أن يكون جي دي فانس هو نائب الرئيس، كان لك دور في إقناع ترامب بهذه الفكرة. هذه نحن سمعناها. الآن أنت هل تؤكدها، هل تنفيها؟ إلى أي حد هذه العبارة صحيحة؟
I don't know why the American media has some kind of interest in pretending that I have powers that I don't have. There was a book released about me yesterday. I didn't even know it was coming out, by a New York writer, reviewed in the New York Times, about how I have all this power. From my perspective, I don't have power. I've never sought power. What I seek is to convince people of what I think is true. And I've been doing that for 35 years with varying degrees of success. I mean, there are many things that I have argued against in public and in private.
هذا من شكل العام،
لكن anyway.
في النهاية الإعلام ويعطي قوة ويعطي شكل من أشكال النفوذ. هل فعلا أنت أثرت على أو حاولت التأثير بشكل مباشر أو غير مباشر على الرئيس الأمريكي ترامب في موضوع اختيار نائب الرئيس أن يكون هو جي دي فانس وليس وزير الخارجية؟ هذا ما قالته نيويورك تايمز.
I mean, I said...
ما هي الحقيقة؟
I mean, I have no idea is the truth. I can't know because the president made the decision and only he knows why he made it. But I was public in my views that I thought that J.D. Vance was a voice of restraint and wisdom. And the most impressive politician I had met ever in the United States, I still believe that, in his decency, in his wisdom, as I said, is in his capacity to understand what's happening, the most impressive. I don't always agree with him. Certainly, he doesn't always agree with me, so far as I can tell. I'm not the power behind anybody. I have no power. The words that I speak in private, and since we just had a cup of coffee before, are pretty much identical to the words I speak in public. Like, I don't have a lot of hidden views. I just say what I think, and people who agree can agree, and those who disagree, quite loudly do. But that's it. I just say what I think is true, and if you agree, that's up to you.
يعني لست مستشارا يعني غير معلن لترامب بشكل أو بآخر؟
I'm not well, I would say almost nothing I do is hidden at all. I'm just not a hidden person. I don't want to be a hidden person. If you were sitting at my dinner table with my wife and children and me, you would find us talking a lot about dogs and the things that we talk about. But I don't think you would see a different person. I know that the intel agencies are fully aware of this because, again, they're in my phone. And I'm sure they're in yours as well. And I'm sure they'll leak everything at some point, and you will find me, I think, fully recognizable. That's what I seek. I want to be the same in public as I am in private. And if you ask anyone who knows me, I would be shocked if they disagree with it. They will say he's exactly the same because I am. And so any advice I would give to Trump is advice that I would say right to you on camera.
يعني خليني أسأل سؤال آخر. من هو الأفضل لمستقبل أمريكا بعد ترامب؟ من هو الشخصية المرشحة الأفضل لإكمال مسيرة الترامبية إن صح التعبير؟
That's not a hard question. I mean, it's a very obvious question answer from my perspective, but let me just say that there's been an attempt in American media to portray me as a hater or an anti-Semite, which I'm not. I'm opposed to anti-Semitism. It's against my religion, and I've said that many times, and I mean it. But the idea is that I am a hateful figure, I'm an anti-Semite, and therefore J.D. Vance cannot get the nomination. They're using me to attack J.D. Vance. I understand what's going on. So I hesitate even to say nice words about J.D. Vance because I don't want to hurt J.D. Vance. But of course, J.D. Vance, from my perspective, and I don't always agree with his decisions, but is the wisest, most restrained, most knowledgeable leader that we could have after Donald Trump. So I believe that. I've thought that for years. I think it even more now. Yeah, that's my view.
وهو الأقدر على إدارة أمريكا في مستقبلها ما بعد ترامب.
Yes, I mean, America's going through an awful lot of changes right now, but so is the world. Big changes, historical changes. So, yeah, whoever takes the helm is going to be either, a success or a failure. There'll be no middle ground. And it's going to take a far-sighted person to manage those changes. And I think he's the only person I can think of who could do that.
أنت في أكثر من مرة في هذا اللقاء تحاول تشير أنه ليس لك طموح سياسي، لن تترشح لأي منصب سياسي، لن تكون سيناتور، لن تكون حاكم ولاية كما يشيع بعضهم أنه هذا طموحك، يعني تنفي أي طموح سياسي. أين يقف طموحك؟ أين تريد أن ترى نفسك في نهاية المطاف؟ ما هي نقطة الذروة التي تريد أن تصل لها؟
I have no ambition. I've never had any ambition. I am ambitionless. I don't want anything that I don't already have. And people may not believe that, but it's true. And I want our country to be better. I do not want political power. I've never sought it. If I had sought it, you would have seen me serve in the first Trump administration, which I think I could have done, or in the second Trump administration in some capacity. I had no interest. I never asked. I never attempted that. I don't want it. So no, I have no interest. And by the way, I don't think I'd be very good at it. I have strong views. I think I have clarity in some ways. I believe I have clarity in some ways. But
ما هو الدور الذي تحاول أن تلعبه مثلا في حركة ماجا؟ ما أدري من اللي وصفك قال أنه هذا تاكر كارلسون هو نبي حركة
My
ماجا.
role is to explain what I think is true and to do it as clearly as I can. And to try, and this is the difficult part for me, as I've said, is to pull my emotion out of it and to be as honest as I can be while not being cruel. Okay, that's my goal. That is, you ask my ambition, that's my ambition. That's it right there. And I plan to do that until someone stops me, and no doubt someone will stop me at some point because it's very unpopular. But
لماذا ومن؟
I don't know. You can just sort of feel that you're bumping up against things that are forbidden, and words are the scariest thing to people. People in power are far more afraid of words than guns. Far more afraid. There's been a much greater effort to control Americans' speech than there has been to control their guns. There are hundreds of millions of guns in the United States, hundreds of millions. And there's been no real effort to ban them. There's been a concerted effort to ban words. Why? Because words are a greater threat to power than guns.
واضح. مؤخرا ظهرت استراتيجية جديدة للدفاع في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، تحدثت عن تغير في الدور الخارجي للولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، التخلي عن دور شرطي العالم إلى سيد النصف الغربي من الكرة الأرضية. كيف تقرأ هذه التغير في السياسة الأمريكية الجديدة؟
That's an insightful question. Smart question. I think that's inevitable, of course. You have a competing, nothing stays the same, right? So you have a competing power center in the East. That's been true for most of history. You've had different spheres of influence by region, and it's usually broken into East and West. You sit in the middle of those, so you're very aware of this. But the difference is we've never had a globalized economy in a multipolar world. That is a brand new thing. That's never happened. So for most of history, you had a Eastern kingdom, the Mongols, the Chinese, Western kingdoms, whether they were in Rome or Constantinople or London, then Washington. Even during the Cold War, you had East and West, but they had their closed loop economic systems. There was no trade between the Warsaw Pact and NATO. Now you have the world interconnected by trade, fueled in part by the GCC, this region, and consumed by the West and by everybody. So these parts can't live without each other. And yet, you're going to have to share political and military power. That is, again, that's never happened before. I'm not sure how that's going to work. I think it has to work because the option is like a global war in which one power reasserts unipolar dominance over the world. And to get from here to there will require huge numbers of people to be killed. And so, of course, I pray that that doesn't happen, but it's going to take a lot of skill to have a multipolar world in a globalized economy, I think.
يعني جعلنا ندخل إلى تفاصيل هنا. أن تتحدث عن عالم متعدد الأقطاب بدل من القطب الواحد. هذا شكل النظام الجديد الذي تنظر له. في الزاوية الغربية القريبة من أمريكا رأينا مشهدا جديدا غير معتاد مع الرئيس الفنزويلي، ما حدث للرئيس الفنزويلي في من قبل الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. هنا سؤال يتحدث عن شرعية القوة مقابل قوة الشرعية.
I think what happened in Venezuela on January 3rd, the removal of the head of state by the United States is a turning point in history, and the end of something and the beginning of something new. Its outlines are not obvious, like we can only guess as to its long-term implications, but among the very obvious ones, the post-war system, the code that we kind of all agreed was real, though it never really was real, that's just gone, okay? We have for 4 years told our people in the West, in Europe and in the United States, that Putin is evil because no larger country can ever take land from a smaller country because that's illegal, it's a war crime. And then for the last 3 years, we've watched Israel do that, and we've punished people for noticing it. No, that's not true. They're not taking land. Well, of course they're taking land. And by the way, they're not unique. This is what larger powers do, always have done. Always. And I'm not even criticizing anybody, but the idea that we had to pretend that the Gaza operation is like a response to October 7th and it's not like an effort to expand the territory of Israel, like that's insulting to me because that's a lie. That's what it is. But with the Venezuela operation earlier this month, by the United States, you can say, I wish Putin hadn't gone into eastern Ukraine. You can say, I wish Israel wasn't colonizing the West Bank and Gaza. But you can't, if you're the US government, say those are immoral. You can't, because we've rewritten the rules. With a remaker, with a self-described remaker, and we just changed the rules. So again, I'm not criticizing anybody, and I'm not casting moral aspersions or wagging a finger in someone's face. I'm just noting the obvious. So where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us in a brand new world, and it opens opportunities for honesty, real conversations about what's in our national interest, your national interest. Like we can be more honest with each other, but it also opens up the potential for real peril. If you want a country's resources and you can arrest or kill its head of state and take the resources, who's to say that's wrong? So again, we're sort of going back to where we've always been before, the modern period, but I'm not sure that we've really thought through the implications of this.
لأنك تحدثت في أحد حواراتك أو كتاباتك أنه هذا السلوك يعني يشبه تصرف إمبراطورية وليس دولة أو جمهورية.
Where of course, I mean, this is not the behavior of a republic. This is the behavior of an empire. And the United States has been an empire since at least 1945, but probably long before. Probably since at least 1898, when we fought with Spain over its former territories and then took control of them, Cuba, Dominican Republic, etc. So, Philippines. So, you can argue about when this began, but domestically in the United States, and you're of course a Saudi, so it's probably more obvious to you looking at the United States than it is to us living in the United States. But most Americans didn't want to be an empire and didn't realize we were. And now we know. And so again, you can argue it in both directions. You could say, well, it's much better to know. But once you know, that has implications. So yes, no, we're an empire, and now we're admitting it. And okay. But what that means domestically is the president makes all the meaningful decisions. So it's a lot more like most countries. Let me just ask you a question. Is there a single country in the world where the legislative body, the lawmaking body, whether it's the parliament or the Congress or whatever we're calling it, the Duma, is more powerful now than it was 10 years ago? The answer is no. Because all the power is going toward the leader in every country around the world. So what's another name for that? The death of democracy. That's the name for that. Now, I'm not endorsing that. I like democracy, actually. I'm an Anglo. I like democracy. We created it. I like it. So I'm not saying that's good. I'm only saying it's happening. That's happening. And we should be honest about it.
يعني بنفس هذا السياق أيضا ما نراه يحدث في غرينلاند مثلا، والحديث حول غرينلاند والحديث الساخن بين أمريكا من جهة ومن الأوروبيين من جهة. لا أريد أن أتحدث عن غرينلاند تحديدا، أنا أتحدث عن العلاقة مع أوروبا، حلف الناتو. ما هو المستقبل برأيك؟ كيف ستتغير المعادلة؟ أنا أتحدث عن أحداث بسيطة سوف تتحدث هنا وهناك أو مفاوضات، أو أنا أتحدث عن شكل العلاقة الجديد بين الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية وأوروبا وحلف الناتو.
Well, it's always hard to know how these things will play out, of course. So the answer is I don't know. But my sense is that NATO became a very different organization after the fall of the Soviet Union. It was created to contain the Soviet Union and keep the Soviets out of Western Europe. Once the Soviet Union collapsed, it wasn't clear what the point was, except to project American power in Europe, which is fine, I guess. But now it's clear that NATO is not serving the interests of Europe. It's obvious that it's not serving the interests of the United States either. And so I would imagine that NATO will dissolve, in effect, if not in name. In other words, it may exist, but it won't mean anything because it clearly doesn't mean anything. So if one NATO member can threaten violence against another NATO member, obviously it's not an alliance with power, right? So obviously. So as to why we would want Greenland, I think there are probably quite a few reasons.
في المقابل إذا رحنا إلى اتجاه الشرق صعود الصين، هل فشلت برأيك أمريكا في إدارة ملف صعود الصين؟
I think that's the most important question. I think it's a very complex question. I think it will depend, of course, this is all obvious. It'll depend upon what the Chinese want, and it'll depend upon the flexibility of the West to come to terms with that. Not just to accept it. We don't have to accept everything China wants, of course, but we're going to have to consider what China wants as we make decisions, and we're not in the habit of that. When you have been in the position the United States has been in for so long, where you just sort of dictate terms. Hey, Saudis, pump more oil. Hey, whomever. You just tell people what to do. It's hard to change. It's the experience that most parents have when their kids become teenagers. I don't know if you have children, but like you have kids and they're like 5 years old. Hey, stop that. Okay. Then they get to be 15 and you sort of tell that maybe they don't take you quite as seriously. And it's very difficult for parents. It can be a crisis for parents to accept that their children are becoming independent of them. And I don't think this is so different from that. And so I hope that we have the wisdom and the maturity to accept things that we can't change, like the rising power of China.
من الأفكار المهمة التي تؤمن بها هي فكرة أنه أمريكا أولا، وأمريكا عظيمة من جديد، وهذه من المبادئ اللي في حركة ماغا، وأنت أيضا تنادي بها وتؤمن بها. أمريكا قوية من جديد أو عظيمة من جديد. وأيضا تؤمن بأنه الانعزالية السياسية ليس من صالح أمريكا أن تشارك في الحروب الخارجية وأن تذهب بجنودها إلى أماكن هنا وهناك في العالم. هناك من يقول أنه هذه الانعزالية السياسية التي ينادي بها تاكر كارلسون لن تجعل أمريكا عظيمة من جديد.
Well, of course, I'm not calling for political isolation at all. In a globalized economy, isolation is not an option. You can't be isolated. So, and speaking for myself, just as a man, as an American who's traveled my whole life and always been interested in the rest of the world, and I'm not an expert, but I've certainly been a lot of places. I really enjoy it. I learn a lot from other cultures and peoples and religions. It doesn't make me less Christian or American or less Anglo of the things that I am. I'm not less those things. But I'm enriched by the rest of the world, and I mean that. So I'm not for isolation. I'm opposed to it, actually. What I'm against is self-harm, is hurting your own country. I don't believe in hurting your own children. I don't think leaders should hurt the people they're in charge of, period. That's it. And if this is not helping us, let's change it. If it's hurting us, let's change it immediately. That's my view. And of course, the liars, and there are many, have characterized that as isolationism. It's just the opposite. I think we should, and let me just say one last thing, which is that Europe is dying. Europe is being destroyed because of its own foolishness, because of decisions the United States has made, for decisions that China has made. There are a lot of reasons for it. That's not good. It's not good. I see Europe as wayward and absurd, foolish, but a world without Europe is not a better world. It's not. My ancestors came from Europe, for one thing. And I think the culture of Europe is worth preserving. And one thing I notice in spending an awful lot of time in the Gulf over 25 years is the true love of many Gulf Arabs for Europe. it's so interesting. And they mean it too. They're not just saying it in public. Like you have dinner with them, a Gulf Arab in any of the GCC countries, and they all have houses in London. They go there in the summer. They just love it. They love France. They love Scotland. They think it's great. And they're not white Christians. They're Gulf Arabs, but they recognize this is a great culture and they enjoy it. And it just tells you, you can love another culture that's not yours and you don't want to destroy it. Why would you want to destroy something beautiful? And you shouldn't want to destroy something beautiful. So I hope that the United States can do something to help Europe because it is truly going away.
على مستوى آخر خارج الحوار، أنت تحدثت عن أنه أنت تسافر البلدان وتتحاول أن تتحدث. يعني قبل اللقاء الحديث اللي دار بيننا بالنسبة لي كان ممتع وجميل، لأنك كنت تسأل أسئلة تريد أن تعرف أكثر، تريد أن تنظر إلى أمور تعرفها من زوايا أخرى. كانت أسئلتك جميلة وحوارك جميل. أنا كنت سعيد ومستمتع كثير بالحوار الجانبي الذي أجريته معك خارج الاستوديو. أريد أن أتجه إلى حدث العام الماضي السعوديون حبوه كثير، حدث في الدرعية. أشاهد جزء منه وأرجع أواصل معك هذا الحديث.
Never anywhere quite like this, and strange only in fascinating. We're at the heart of Saudi Arabia in Riyadh. I've never been before. My guest, Tucker Carlson, has never been here before either. So we're both newbies to Saudi Arabia, and we're going to do a little head-to-head. I grill him for an hour, he grills me for an hour. We tossed a virtual coin on somebody's phone. I won. I get to go first. So I get to have him right where I want him. Tucker Carlson, welcome. We've been here a couple of days. I don't know about you. I've been genuinely stunned by the reality of Saudi Arabia compared to what I've been told it was like.
I have been, but I've met so many people. I have so many friends who, oh, where were you? I was just in Riyadh or Al Ula, or I was, vacationing with my family in Saudi.
أنت العام الماضي وحتى في هذه السنة قمت بزيارات للسعودية عن طريق منتدى مستقبل العقار. وسؤالي يعني ما هي الفرق بين السعودية التي رأيتها عن السعودية التي سمعت بها قبل أن تأتي؟
Well, I mean, it's always true that things, places, and people are different in your experience of them from what you've heard. You'll hear this, hear that, and then you meet someone. This must happen to you a lot. You interview people for a living, and you meet someone, you think, oh, that's not what I thought, And that's true of countries as well. And it's more true of Saudi and Russia than really any other part of the world that I've been to. Part of that is that, of course, the Saudi kingdom has changed dramatically in the last 10 years, as you well know. Part of it is that what we were told was never true in the first place. And there are reasons for that.
ماذا قيل لكم؟
Well, that it's primitive and dangerous and, just silly propaganda about Islam. I just want to say for the fifth time, because I've been attacked so much in the United States as some sort of promoter of Islam, I'm a promoter of Jesus and Christianity. Period. But I just don't like lying. And I sincerely religious people are the best people. They are. I don't like extremism, and I really don't like religious extremism of any kind, including Islamic religious extremism. However, if you have a society in which people bow down before God 5 times a day, I'm not against that. I should bow down before God 5 times a day. And I wish I lived around people who bowed down before God 5 times a day. It is good for you to bow down before God every day. A lot. And so, when you come to this country, and there are other countries like it in the region, and we were told all the stuff after 9/11. I'm not saying Al-Qaeda wasn't real. It was. Who was funding it is more up in the air. But No, of course there are Islamic extremists, but having spent a lot, I keep saying this, but it's true, a lot of time in this region for 25 years. And the reason I came is because of 9/11. That's why I got here in the first place. I have had the opposite experience. And I know a lot of people who live here, and I've eaten in a lot of people's homes. I'm having dinner at someone's home tonight. We're not the same origin, but I feel totally comfortable, completely comfortable, and happy and not judged. And I have respect for reverence. I respect people who respect, whether they respect others or nature or, above all, God. I respect that. We need to have respect. And I feel that here and in other countries like this. And I want more of that in my country. Stop. Be grateful. Have respect for the power that created all of this. Have respect for each other. That's our goal. That should be our goal. And so I'm not going to take another lecture in my country about, Islam this, Islam that. You're lying. And I don't have to take that anymore. I'm sick of it. Does that make sense?
واضح جدا جدا واضح. في الولايات المتحدة بشكل أو بآخر تحاول أن تنشر الديمقراطية في العالم العربي. يعني العراق كمثال، والديمقراطية الأمريكية في العراق يعني ليست أفضل تجربة. إذا رأينا العالم العربي نجد أنه الجمهوريات لم تنجح في العالم العربي مثل ما نجحت نظيراتها في الملكيات. أنت برأيك لماذا؟
Look, we need to focus on the goals. What's the goal? And we were told in the United States that democracy produces peace and prosperity. If that's true, I'm for it. I am for peace and freedom and prosperity. What I'm opposed to is arrogance and chaos. I'm opposed to those in the home. I'm opposed to those in the family, and I'm opposed to those between nations. They are bad. They are from Satan. They're evil. Arrogance and chaos. And in your religion, and in my religion, in Judaism, in the three Abrahamic faiths, arrogance and chaos are considered evil because they are, and they still are. So any system that promotes arrogance and chaos, I oppose. And I don't care what you call it. And anyone who imposes peace or makes peace possible and order and dignity and respect, I'm for. It's that simple to me. I care about the fruits. You can call the tree whatever you want, but it's the fruit that I care about.
الكثيرون تحدثوا أنه أنت اشتريت بيت في قطر.
I have not bought a house in Qatar. I may. I said that for two reasons. One, to make the point, I'll go wherever I want to. I'm an American citizen. I have that freedom and I plan to exercise it. Two, I was being accused by liars in the United States of taking money from the government of Qatar, which I've never done and would not do.
هاجموك في أمريكا على هذا البيت وقالوا أنه قطر تستغلك أو أنه أنت يعني أداة دعائية لقطر، شيء من هذا القبيل. يمكنك سمعت بهذه الأشياء.
Yes. So many in the Israeli government seek to attack Qatar for their own reasons. I have nothing to do with this. Of course, these are not my problems. I'm a private citizen. I merely wanted to make the point. They were saying, well, you're taking money from Qatar, which is the site of the largest U.S. airbase in the region, by the way, is a very close ally. But you're taking money from Qatar, so you're repeating a propaganda. And I wanted to say, no, I haven't taken money from Qatar. I've given money to Qatar. Therefore, they're repeating my propaganda.
Okay.
And I said that because I thought it was very funny.
بختم معك هذا اللقاء بمجموعة من التغريدات التي تحدثت عن تاكر كلاسون في قضايا متعددة، لكن أستأذنك أن تكون تعليقات سريعة عليها لأنه الوقت الباقي قليل إن سمحت لي. خلينا نشوف التغريدات.
Who'd have thought 6 months ago Tucker Carlson would be asking the hard questions? He knows, as do a lot of other right-wingers, that Trump and his merry band of sycophants have stabbed the MAGA movement in the back, from the Epstein files to not getting involved in foreign conflicts.
I'm not Iranian, but the more that time passes, the more I believe that Tucker Carlson had Charlie Kirk assassinated.
Thank you, Ben Shapiro. Tucker Carlson has been a massive disappointment as a human being since leaving Fox News. A rabid anti-Semite and now pro-communist.
Well, unless GOP realizes it has a Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens problem, it won't be pretty. Distance GOP from woke right weirdos. We are not the party of crazies.
I said what I said. Rogue department of the federal government. It should be abolished because it does not do anything to enhance public safety. It actually terrorizes our immigrant community.
تاكر كارلسون مضحك جدا، يظهر كأنه ضد العولمة، بينما أمريكا هي أكبر مستفيد من العولمة على مدار التاريخ.
بعيدا عن هذه التغريدات يعني المباشرة، لكن تشارلي كيرك يعني لم تكن حادث مقتله حادثة عادية وحادثة عابرة. برأيك من هي الجهة التي تقف خلف اغتيال تشارلي كيرك؟
Well, Charlie Kirk was a close friend of mine, and I grieve his murder. And we've heard part of an explanation for what happened. I think it's important to press our government and any government always to get to the truth about what happened. And in my small way, I've tried to do that and plan to continue doing it. But I resent being told what to believe. I will never obey that ever. And I would say of some of those tweets, I don't read that stuff, but I'm struck by how when people don't have an answer to an obvious question, a simple question like why is the United States prioritizing Israel over itself, that instead of answering the question, they attack you, they slander you. You're a jihadi, you're a communist, you hate America, you hate Trump, you're taking money from this or that foreign government. Okay. None of that's true, but let's say all of it was true. Let's say that's all true. I'm a bad person. What's the answer?
وإلى جواب.
Answer the question. But they never will because there is no answer.
لا تخشى أن من صوب بندقيته نحو تشارلي كيرك يفكر بأن يفعل خططه مع تاكر كارلسون؟
Of course. Of course. Obviously, I've thought of that. I can't control that. None of us can really control our fates. And I don't think that we're honest with ourselves about that, that it truly is beyond our control. It is in God's hands. And I'm comfortable with that. I hope I live a long time. I want to have many, many grandchildren, but I'm not in charge and I'm not worried about it at all.
لا ستعيش إن شاء الله عمر مديد، لا تقلق إن شاء الله. هل لك فوينتس بشكل أو بآخر حل مكان تشارلي كيرك؟
I don't think so. I think I wouldn't. I don't know. You know where things are going. I think he made some very true points. He said true things about a relationship with Israel, which is not helping the United States, and there's no reason to continue doing this. It's bad for us. Has been very bad for us, and bad for Israel too. But I think. I don't see him as the leader of a movement. I think he seems very interested in himself. And in order to lead something, you have to be interested in the people you lead, not just yourself.
سأستخدم نفس طريقة تاكر كارلسون في الأسئلة. اسمح لي هذه المرة. سأستعير طريقتك في الأسئلة. سأتقمص دور أسئلة تاكر كارلسون ببناء سردية معينة. هذا السؤال هو السؤال التالي. أنت أجريت حوار مع نيك فونتس، وهذا الحوار كان ليس حوارا عابرا، كان المقصود منه صناعة رأي ما أو رأي عام تجاه شيء ما.
I didn't think my interview with Nick Fuentes was controversial at all. I didn't know much about him. He's very popular. I made the point to him that I think anti-Semitism is immoral. It's wrong. It's against our religion as Christians to be anti-Semites or to hate people on the basis of how they were born. I believe that. And I told him that. And then I allowed him to explain what he thinks. I don't think that's a crime. I don't think it's controversial. I don't feel bad about it. I'm happy with the interview. I was happy when I finished. I said what I believed. I let him talk. And I think that a lot of people had other reasons for saying that, but I was never bothered by it for 1 minute.
لا، فكرة إنه المظلومية البيضاء تعود بشكل أو بآخر، الاستبدال العظيم في الهجرة، فكرة يعني الموقف الحاد أحيانا الذي يتخذ تاكر كارلسون ضد الهجرة، وأنه اليسار يريد أن يأتي بمجموعة من المهاجرين حتى يستطيع السيطرة على القرار. هذه الأفكار، إشاعات المظلومية البيضاء، هل هذه هي أسلوب يتخذه تاكر كارلسون يعني باستمرار خاصة في الفترة الأخيرة؟
Was on grievance. I mean, it's true. Whites are being replaced in Europe, the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And maybe you like that, maybe you don't. I think if Saudis were being replaced in Saudi Arabia, you would say, what is this? Why is everybody Chinese? It's not hatred against Chinese. I doubt you hate Chinese, but you've grown up in a Saudi country and you would like to live with Saudis. And I think the Chinese feel the same way. If they woke up and half of China was Saudi, they would say, we're being replaced by the Saudis. That's not hatred. What is being done to America is hatred. It's hatred of whites, obviously. And you can yell and say you're a racist for saying that, but I'm not a racist. I think racism is immoral. And I know that Muslims feel the same way, and God bless them for feeling that way. But what is happening is a crime against the people of the United States and Europe. And it's being done not by the migrants. They're not doing this. They're just moving from Syria or Morocco or wherever for a better life. I understand. I'm not mad at them. But they're not the ones who did this. The European governments under pressure did this. And they're the ones I'm mad at. And I think I have every reason to be mad about that. And I'm never going to stop saying that because it's true. And people can call me whatever they want, but everyone knows it's true.
في ملفات أبستين ما زالت قضية جدلية ولم يفرج عن الملفات. هناك غموض في القصة. لماذا يعني حتى الرئيس الأمريكي لم يفي بكل وعوده تجاه هذا الموضوع؟ ما الذي تريد قوله ونحن لا نعرفه في هذا السياق؟
I don't understand the reluctance to be honest about Jeffrey Epstein. And I'm not speaking primarily even of President Trump. I mean, of the US media, other governments. Epstein is dead. And so there's no
مات مقتولا ولا منتحرا؟
Well, he was murdered. He was murdered in federal prison in the United States.
من اغتاله؟
I don't know. I don't know. But
من المستفيد من قتله؟
Well, you know, anyone concerned about Epstein speaking in public about what he'd been doing would benefit from his assassination, which was clearly why he was murdered.
وهو أداة بيد من؟ أبستين كان أداة بيد من؟
Well, I mean, everyone wants to make this just about Israel. It's not just about Israel. And of course, he was very close to Ehud Barak, who was living in his house in New York for periods. So clearly he was close to Israel. He was also close to the US government and to the CIA and to British intelligence. It's not just about Israel, okay? It's about the global power structure, which, doesn't want its sources and methods revealed. I understand that. But I think the American public has a right to say, what is this? And I don't think it's primarily a story about sex. I think there are sexual elements, but I don't think it's really about sex. It's about who runs the world and on whose behalf. And everyone knows that. And I would just, and this is the last thing I will say, but I would just encourage people to stop lying so much. I don't know everything the Epstein story was about. I don't know. I wish I did. I never will know, I suspect. But I think the rest of us have an obligation to be honest about what's obvious. Clearly, this guy was involved in big projects on behalf of various governments and various interests, and like there's overwhelming evidence that that's true.
في نفس التغريدات موضوع الأحداث الأخيرة التي تحدث في الهجرة والمقتل، القوات التي آيس في أمريكا التي قتلت يعني أكثر من شخص، وهناك امتعاض واستياء مما يحدث. ما هو رأيك وأنت من الناس الذين لست مع فتح الباب للمهاجرين؟
Well, those migrants were not welcome. They came illegally. They're not allowed to be there. And so it's really simple. It's in violation of American law and sovereignty. So Joe Biden allowed 20 million people in illegally, in many cases without biometrics. No country would stand for that. Saudi Arabia would not stand for that. Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait, Morocco. No country would stand for that because it's outrageous. It's an assault on sovereignty and it's a destruction of the nation. And the Trump administration is trying to make them leave. And in the process of doing that, 2 people were shot to death in very upsetting circumstances that I think are horrible. I feel very sad for their families, and I mean that. However, we still have tens of millions of people who have no right to be in the United States and who are hurting the United States. And I'm not mad at them. I'm mad at the people who let them in, but they need to leave.
سؤالي الأخير، ما هي الكلمة الأخيرة التي تود أن تنهي بها هذا اللقاء؟
The last thing I would like to say is thank you for having me.
شكرا.
And I mean that. I think this country, this region has been really welcoming and polite. And I think one quality in people that we undervalue, we don't think is important, but actually is very important, is politeness and graciousness. That's very important to me. I think it's very important to most people, and I feel it here and in this region and in many countries, but I always am thankful for it. So thank you.
وشكرا لك أيضا أنت على هذا الحوار. الشكر موصول لكم أنتم. منقلوا عن تاكر كارلسون أنه يقول: لم أتلقى أي أموال من الروس. السلام عليكم.